Okay. It says recording pending. So I don't know what that means. Let's wait for another. There we are. Okay, folks, welcome. HUL256, Monday the 17th. We're now in lecture 5. So that's the start of week 3. And as with your other courses, your first assignments are going to be out soon. So I'll give you a 5-mark question probably due a week from now, and then another 5-mark question due a week from Friday. Just by way of comprehension of the material we've done so far. You may have to go back, you probably will have to go back to the readings for some of it because it may not, I don't, in the class sessions, I don't have time to cover everything I've assigned by way of reading, so it'll take some time to do that, but they'll be quite straightforward. They'll be on the order of, if you remember in the last lecture, we looked at that that passage full of emotive meaning about abortion, the Holocaust, etc. And so if you remember, the assignment there was just replace the emotive words with cognitive words, say something about how that changes how you think about the passage. So it'll be of the order of a question of that kind. So that's the first announcement. The second announcement is the tutorial slots. So we are starting tutorials this week, and I've posted links to the 3 tutorial slots. I'm not so thrilled about the Tuesday timing right now. I think the Tuesday timing is it 5 o'clock that I've scheduled it for? It's not ideal. I may have to push it. I think it's 5:30 it's scheduled for right now. I might have to push it to 6 or even 6:30.
Yes, sir, you can do either from 6 or 5. Like 5:30 is it will clash with 2 slots, right?
Do you already have evening slots? You have.
Yes,
When is
sir,
your last slot for class?
Sir, I have from 5 to 6 one slot. Just.
Okay, so maybe then what I'll do is I'll make it. I'll start it at 6 then.
On Tuesday, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, sir, but I will not be able to join then because I have class from 6 to 8.
Okay, that's fine, Amjad. You can join one of the other tutorials.
Yeah, I can join on the Friday slot. That's fine for me.
That's fine. So people know, right? The tutorial, these 3 slots. There's we'll now say 6 to 7 on Tuesday, 1 to 2 on Wednesday, and 4 to 5 on Friday. Is there anything? Is there anyone who would like to attend tutorials but can't make any one of those slots? No? Okay. So I'm actually very happy to take a whole tutorial hour, even if one person shows up. So I plan to just stay on in this. I think it's, if you have friends in the class, it's a fun place to show up together. If it turns out over a period of time that one of the tutorials is really undersubscribed, then I might ask those people to club together with the other slot. We'll just see how that goes. As I said before, I strongly do encourage participation, though from the point of view of your grades, that's optional. Though the material that we'll be studying in the tutorials will also be part of what you're expected to understand for your assignments and exams. So just to preview what we're up to, in this week, we're going to wrap up this discussion of critical thinking and language. And from next week onwards, we are going to move on really to another part of the course, which is on reasoning and argumentation. And I've posted on Piazza for the reading for Friday, which we'll see how long the we may only be able to begin it on Friday and carry on Monday. Would be kind of a bridge between these two parts of the course. And that will take us, I think, another 3 weeks. So we've done 3 weeks of this, 3 weeks on reasoning and argumentation, 3 weeks, I think, on science and superstition, and then finally 3 weeks on reasoning with data. That's how I'm thinking about the course so far. What we're going to do in tutorials is now starting a kind of application section of the course, which will take us a couple of weeks, and thinking about language, propaganda, and genocide. Why are we doing that? And the reading that I've assigned for this week has to do with Nazi propaganda and in connection with Nazi genocide. I'll post some optional readings for those of you who would like more of a historical background as to what was going on. Why study these issues in a course on critical thinking? Well, historically, often it's been instances of mass violence which have prompted people to ask, why didn't people see through this? How did they buy into, let's say, the demonization of the Jews in Nazi Germany? Not just the Jews, but a whole bunch of people who were demonized and excluded. So one question that arose after the Second World War, not just in connection with Nazism, but also in connection with really with Stalin and other forms of fascism, was, again, what kinds of people what can one equip people to, what sorts of tools can one give people to resist things like fascism and Nazism? Not resist in the sense of going out and marching in the streets or being an activist, but resist in one's mind, being able to see through, in the political context, lies and manipulation. A further connection with kind of the toolkit you're getting in the course and this applications is that propaganda has been seen to be key to these genocides. And again, one aim of critical thinking has been to kind of make one propaganda proof, or to be able to resist propaganda. Now, we'll read a little bit about propaganda, and it goes well beyond these very extreme cases, right? Nazi Germany, Rwanda is the other case that often comes up in this context. These are extreme cases of propaganda. We'll see in a few weeks that propaganda may be an inescapable part of democratic countries as well. But be that as it may, we'll see a documentary and think about the work of a person you may have heard of, Noam Chomsky, who claims that propaganda is not only a property of people, the Nazi Party in 1930s Germany, but is prevalent also in Western democracies, where it may not be targeted at genocide, but it may be targeted at many other things. For instance, it may be targeted, in the case of the United States, at turning a blind eye to lots of colonial violence, right? The Vietnam War or the Iraq War. So again, one aim of a critical thinking course might be to allow one to resist propaganda. And really, one test of some of the material that you are being given in the lecture period is to ask, look, is any of this going to be helpful at all? And the final connection, the reason why I'm introducing this material now, is that there is a theory that the language one uses and framing effects play a particularly powerful role in propaganda, and a role that allows propaganda to legitimate violence when it leads to violence. One mode in which people have discussed that is using the term dehumanization. Any idea what that means? Or have people come across that term? Any guesses? Yeah, Subhita.
I mean, dehumanization means treating someone the way you, as a human, wouldn't like to be treated. Like you're treating someone as they are not humans. Like you're treating someone like animals or something like that. And dehumanization, uh, like give ways to violence and I mean stuff like that that you wouldn't want to go through.
So good. Dehumanization obviously clearly has a connection with treating somebody as less than human. But how does dehumanization through language work? What would be an example? Then we're looking at in the course right now. We're looking at language and critical thinking. So what would be an example of dehumanizing somebody through language?
I think ethnic cleansing might be an example.
Okay, but ethnic cleansing, what is the connection with language there?
Yeah, that's not connected to the language per se, but just the whole act, what it describes.
Okay, Parth has a hand up.
Sir, through language, I mean, I think we can connect it in a way like when we refer to someone like through words like he was trotting around. There's something like we would refer to a dog to, or maybe like his actions weren't lifelike or something like that. Like if we are like trying to describe someone as you would describe robots or an animals or something like that. That is what leads to dehumanization, according to me.
Okay, good. I think in the context that we'll be looking at, in the context where this has been studied, primarily, I think genocide. Uh, People say that genocide of particular ethnic groups, using terms like calling certain populations cockroaches, termites, pests. Um, Good, Unnati, that's certainly an example um, which you could use to argue that when you call a woman a doll, again you have a different frame. This is a plaything. This is not a person who. This is not a person. This is an object. Um, so sometimes the word, especially in the context of uh, feminism, the word is often used objectification. And it's true that uh, in the case Unnati gives, that's an example. But in these hardcore ethnic cleansing kind of contexts, it's often this idea that you refer to a population as cockroaches. And what's the frame that triggers? If you're referring to some ethnic population, let's say you're referring to an ethnic minority in Rwanda
The
as cockroaches.
frame, the frame might be like cockroaches are like sources of our like many problems and diseases, and they ought to be like cleaned out or killed.
That's right. You don't worry about killing cockroaches. Cockroaches are the kind of thing that you want to get rid of. So now over time, um, you have a repeated use of the term cockroach to describe some population, and the population starts being killed. Well, maybe people just get desensitized to think, look, that's the only way we're going to have to get rid of these people. So that's why I'm bringing this material into this part of the course at this stage, and some of it's going to be um, disturbing, but then that's, I guess that's life. And in a way, what's the point of an education if it doesn't shake one or disturb one at some point? And so for this week, for people who show up for the tutorials, take a look at what I've posted, and just ask yourself, suppose you were an ordinary German in the 1930s, in the 40s, faced with all the propaganda around you, how likely are you to be immune to forming the kinds of attitudes towards Jews in particular that they would like you, the Nazis would have liked to form? That's a question that might prompt some interesting reflection on your part. Okay, so that's a long prelude to the material in this course, which is now starting from, I'll start sharing my screen, then excerpt from Carroll on section 3. Remember, I said we'll read section 3 and 5 for today. I think we'll only get through section 3. But before we start this, any questions on what I've just said? Or on how tutorials are going to be run? Any administrative questions?
So not administrative questions, but like you said, like how immune to something like Nazi Germany is happening, like it starts happening in India. So sir, like today we know, like we have read lots about that, like how the propaganda works. So like we know, so something kind of it can be considered like vaccines, like we have been vaccinated about that, so we may be more immune to like at that time of people who were there in Germany. They don't know about such kinds of things, and that's a kind of thing were happening for the first time. So they were like anyway going to go.
Okay, good. That's a possibility. So I wasn't asking you directly to think about. So there are two different questions. I was thinking, imagine yourself being back in 1920 as an ordinary German. How would you react then? And Ratnesh has asked a different question, which is, suppose the same kind of stuff was happening in India now, how would we react now? So I was actually asking the first question, not the second question, but we'll talk a little bit, maybe not this week, but down the line, on language and violence and calls to genocide in India as well. That's also going to be, I think, quite disturbing. At least I find it quite disturbing when I look at that material. Okay, so let me move on then. So last week we did one set of things on language. We looked at issues of framing. We looked at this distinction between emotive and cognitive terms. We looked at euphemisms. And again, as I mentioned, all of this is united by this idea that there are ways in which language by itself is being used to switch off your critical thinking facilities. The other thing that we did remember is this issue of, well, actually, let me not talk about that right now. Right? So that is the main one set of possible abuses of language. Today we're going to look at another set that Carroll describes in section 3 of this chapter. And we'll talk in the time that we have of 3 or 4. The first is this term hedging. It's not a very common term, at least in Indian English. And it's probably easiest to think about it through examples. And again, these are all American examples, so they may be a little bit alien. But think about this. You have a politician who says, as he's campaigning for elections, that he's not going to be involved with the um, management of his, his assets, presumably companies that he owns and things. Why would he say that? Why would he be expected to say that?
Conflicts of interest.
Yeah, could you explain that?
So since he's a politician, if he's elected, he has executive power and basically to enact laws and his view of his views. And if he still has control over his assets, then his views, his objective judgment on a certain issue will be clouded by potential monetary gain from his assets and holdings. So to prevent that from happening, you have to give it to a trust, and then when you're out of office, you get back control of the assets.
Right. So that's what he's promising, right? So he's saying, I'm not going to be involved in my assets if I'm elected. It turns out that after he's elected, he is in fact consulted on these major decisions. And now people are calling him on it, and he says, hey, there's a difference between being involved and being consulted. Being involved implies a day-to-day role, and I'm obviously not doing that. How do you react to that as a response? You think it's an adequate response from a politician? What are your gut reactions? Anyone? You think it's? Would you be upset at a politician who says that? You do not expect much by way of truth from politicians. Let's give one more example. This Reagan example, it may be a little bit more complicated, but the famous example of Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky. This is the claim that is made in court. I never had a sexual relationship with the president. Clinton says this is absolutely true. When there's evidence produced that Clinton had had oral sex with Monica Lewinsky, Clinton said, hey, I did say that I didn't have a sexual relationship, but there's a distinction between having a sexual relationship and engaging in sexual acts. And he says, that's why technically or legally I didn't lie, because I said that I did not have a sexual relationship, and that is true. I didn't say I didn't perform any sexual acts, so I didn't actually lie. How do you characterize these moves, and how would you, like I said, how do you react to them? How do you react to them? Nope, no reactions. There's a lot of people on this call to have such quiet. Can you think of examples around you or cases you've read about? Nope. So anyway, so this what Carroll calls hedging. That's basically cases where a person uses a term in a kind of everyday kind of sense. People believe that person thinking of the everyday sense of that term, and later when they're called upon, the fact that their actions are not matching up with what they said no, we were using it in this kind of technical sense, in a legal sense, not in the everyday sense. So, technically speaking, there's no mismatch as to what I said. And at least my reaction when I read this and say, look, you're getting away on a technicality. When you said these things, I didn't assume, and there was no reason for me to assume that there was this highly technical context that you were trying to speak in. And therefore, while what you said was technically correct, it was nevertheless misleading. So you didn't lie to me. Maybe it's an open question. You didn't lie to me, but at least you misled me. Any other cases where you can mislead somebody without lying to them?
So like wrongly representation of statistical data.
So Anurag and then Parth. Yeah, go ahead, Anurag.
So like wrongly using of statistical data to imply a much more change than it actually is.
So what's an example of that?
So like in America, like there were many campaigns and all which used like graphs and all demonstrate how one party was better than another. But like means all the graphs were like correct, but like statistically there wasn't as much difference as it actually was.
Okay,
So they were like misleading people to show that they were doing very much better than the others.
Okay, we'll see some examples of this towards the end of the class. Parth?
Yeah, sir. I think a lot of times you can mislead someone when you're by intent, like framing the truth in a very specific manner. Like a very common example I would say is of Mahabharata, when Yudhishthir is someone who like tricks Dronacharya by saying that his son has died or Ashwatthama is dead, something like that. When he does not specify it's the animal, not his son. So when you're just mentioning half truths is also a very common way of misleading someone.
Good. So these are cases of exploiting a very specific kind of ambiguity, an ambiguity about the context. Is it like a legal context or a non-legal context, or an ambiguity about the reference of the term? Does Ashwatthama mean Dronacharya's son, or does it mean the elephant? And you can see how would you, by the way, if you were an investigative journalist or an opposition politician trying to catch out these politicians, like what would you do to make sure you didn't fall for this kind of thing?
Don't look at their words, but look at their actions, and based on that take judgment.
Okay, that's one thing you could do, but these after all are disputes about words, right? Somebody is saying to that governor, look, that lieutenant governor, you said you would not be involved, but here you're being involved. Anyone else?
So trying to after collecting the evidence against them, trying to use the words against them, like they are trying to bend the words around what they want, we should try to do the same.
Well, I wasn't thinking of this. Sure, the way I framed the question might allow for that. I wasn't thinking of this as a kind of war against these people. I think if you're somebody interested in critical thinking, let's say as a critical thinker, and I was thinking, institutionally, in the case of politicians, the institutions involved or that are required to think critically about politicians often are, like the media, right? And there you might ask people to clarify, well, what exactly do you mean by X? Or when somebody, the governor says, I made a distinction between being involved and being consulted, you can ask, was that a distinction you think your hearers made in their minds when they heard what you said? And If not, well, why did you use those particular words? So there's a range of ways in which asking for these sorts of contexts is quite helpful, and we'll see more of that. About halfway through the course, we'll do a session on what are called informal fallacies. We'll see some of this. Okay, let me turn then to the next set of things, which is what he calls the language of advertising, and that's the case with one set of questions has to do with these terms called weasel words. And he has this nice definition: weasel words give the impression of taking a firm position while actually avoiding commitment to any specific claim. And you can see, I hope that when you read these examples, they are familiar to you, right? If some product is marketed by saying it may help relieve pain, or it may help protect you from COVID, it may help increase your memory. That's actually not saying very much. Well, it may do it. If then you did a study which showed that it doesn't help, the advertiser can say, hey, I didn't actually say it will help, I just said it may help. So I think that's not very uncommon. Up to is another nice kind of example, right? This pen lasts up to 20% longer. This washing powder cleans up to 20% more than its competitor. Are these things familiar? Can you think of contemporary ads
Yes,
that
these
have?
kinds
Yes,
of
sir.
things we get on like Amazon, like
Yes, sir. I think
Okay, so there are two, three
clip.
people spoke. So there's Ratnesh, Hemant, and somebody else. So give me contemporary advertisements that use language in this way, weasel words, or advertisements that you've seen.
I think, sir, in every ads there is saying that up to 10% off, up to 20% off in Amazon advertisement or any other JioMart or Flipkart advertisement.
Okay, so
Then we
that's
can,
in the context of discounts.
yeah, of course, in the context of discounts.
Okay, that's not strictly speaking, I guess, an advertisement still for the product, but still, sure, it's a place where
Also, like,
maybe up to is playing the same kind of role. You could say it's up to 50%, but then the 50% case is that's very, very specific
I
condition
think, sir,
that nobody's actually meet, right? That kind
in
of
many
case.
products there is also saying that you will get 50% as more. Yeah, you can compare this.
Okay. Ratnesh was saying something, and then somebody else whom I didn't see. Piyush, was it? So we'll go Ratnesh and Piyush.
I was saying the same thing. Like on Amazon, like they say that spin this and you will have like 20,000 up to 20,000 prize or something like that.
and so the most common is like
Some
in those
sorry.
Dettol and Lysol, like 19.9% germs. So like they say that it's not always the case. Like,
Okay.
Also, one of the most famous was that Red Bull gave you wings, but somebody did a case on that because
Yeah.
he said that didn't give me wings. So
Really?
he actually won a lot of money from that, and they had to change the spelling of wings from
Huh.
making two eyes in wings.
Really? I had no idea. Um, so we'll see. Yeah, we'll see. I guess, like I said, more examples um, uh, of misleading advertisements. I see somebody else. Amzad has a hand up. Yeah, go ahead, Amzad.
Other than this, success would be the best example. You really,
Amzad, your voice is very unclear.
am I clear now?
A little bit better. Yeah.
I was saying like Ramdev's success to enter in the market would be the
Huh.
example. Sell products in the name of religion, in the name of religious sentiment. I think that could be the example to how to manipulate people on their sentiments so that to selling the things.
Okay, well, it'd be nice actually to have examples of this. This is not the Ramdev case. I'm not seeing as a specific example of a misuse of language, but maybe there's this more general question of what you associate with what. So we'll see that. Like I said, we'll have an advertiser come and talk to us to explain what the process is. There's again, I'm sure you can think of many examples which use these absurd or meaningless expressions. King of beers. What is that ad? Do you guys remember this MasterCard ad? Richard Gere. You know what I'm talking about? And there's a particular slogan. Some things in life are priceless. For other things, they're MasterCard. There's MasterCard. Do you not remember this? Maybe I'm showing my. I guess I'm showing my age when I used to watch TV. Anyway, so these are cases of misleading associations, not strictly speaking misleading language, but misleading associations. Then we have a list of, and this is I think quite important, what he calls assuring expressions. Can you think of other cases like this? So, of course, everyone knows, experts all agree, there's no question. What are some other ways in which people, modify statements that they make to make it seem like it's a no-brainer?
About toothpaste and all, like 9 out of 10 doctors agree.
Okay, that's in an advertising context. I mean, think about it in an interpersonal context or hearing somebody give a speech. And what happens if you hear somebody saying, let's say it is certain that, or that's a no-brainer, or of course. What's the or obviously? I guess that's a term that one uses. If you're the listener and somebody says to you, obviously, I don't know, vaccines don't work, or obviously, such and such person is extremely corrupt, or obviously the professor doesn't know what he's talking about. What happens if you're a listener when you hear that, or when you see it in print?
Well, it kinda implies that if you question the claim, then you are stupid.
That's right. So you can't even get to the questioning of the claim because you have to get past this thing that, no, yeah, if I don't agree with it, what this person is saying, then I'm stupid because I can't even see that it's obviously true, let alone that it's true. So it's like one more hump to jump to get over before you even question the claim. Has that happened to you guys, by the way, ever? Where you're kind of unsure about something because somebody else is really confident about that thing, and then maybe you really realize later that they were, their confidence wasn't warranted.
Yes, sir. Lots of times.
What's an example where this happened?
Some Sir, in daily life, it happens if there is a discussion on something and like discussion on some news or uh, knowledge about some topic, then it happens.
And you feel it happens psychologically to you that you're on the back foot because somebody said it very confidently.
Yes, sir.
It happened to me uh, in a very weird way after I got married, because my wife's family is full of very confident speakers, but they recognize that when they talk to each other, they don't take them seriously. Whereas my family, everyone's extremely diffident and doesn't like saying things with great confidence. So I always thought, like, how is this person speaking so confidently? And they must be right. And then I realized that no, they just talk that way. It doesn't mean that they're actually that confident. And in fact, I'm a philosopher and she's a lawyer, and in the law, you have to be confident to persuade the judge. So even if you don't, even if you think your client, may not be, maybe the client is guilty, you have to say, of course, Your Honor, my client is completely innocent. There's no question that he could have been anywhere near whatever the scene of the crime. Um, in philosophy, it's all about, you have to be really careful about saying things that match up to your evidence. So that was quite interesting to me. But it's one, I think it's an important lesson, maybe even more important than Carol gives it, um, which is, I would frame it as beware of confidence, for a couple of different reasons. One is that um, even though the course has so far been framed in this self-defensive kind of way, I think one of the things it should teach you is, or I would want you to take away from it, is the importance of humility, intellectual humility. The idea, look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I've not looked at the evidence that I need to, or haven't thought as much as I should about this issue. So that's one reason to be um, less confident of one's own views than one might already be. But I think, as I said to you before, I think we live in a world where um, people are more confident than they should be. Um, there's also a term for this. Have you guys heard of something called the Dunning-Kruger effect?
No, sir, I have not heard this.
Yeah, post some stuff on it. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is essentially people overestimate how much they know about something. Mukul, go ahead.
So basically, it means that the less you have knowledge about something, more confident you are, higher is your confidence in that particular thing. And so basically, it's a graph. So it goes up. It's a graph between confidence and competence. So the more your competence is, first your confidence keeps going down, then it reaches a certain minima. And after that, as your competence increases, your confidence again increases. So basically, if you know less about something, you feel that you're more confident. But as your knowledge keeps increasing, uh, then you feel that, okay, there is a lot for me to explore now. So maybe I'm not that good at this topic. But after a certain level of competence, then again you are confident at that particular thing. I'm not able to put it very well, but it's basically that.
Okay, yeah. So I think that's close. Like I said, I'll post it on Piazza. Imtiaz, you want to say something? You're unmuted. No. Piyush.
Yeah, sir. The most the most common thing I came across in this regard was when we tell that we are from IITs, then people automatically assume that everything is set for us and life is great. We have no problems. And when even if we try to tell them, then they just say with so much confidence that मतलब तू तो आईआईटी में है तो मतलब even we feel like seriously, why do we have these problems? We are in IIT.
Maybe that's true. Maybe that's not a case where you should be worried about their confidence?
Yeah, that's what I can't understand right now because they say it with so much confidence. It feels like it's true.
Then it must be true, and therefore you must be mistaken and thinking you have problems.
No, what sir, but we do have problems.
So one of you is wrong.
And sir, we also need to work hard. As they are saying that you don't need to worry or do anything. The life is set.
Hmm. Sure, fair enough. So to bring it back to this point, yeah, I would. Whenever you hear somebody say something extremely confidently, and of course, confidence can be. It doesn't have to be these assuring expressions, right? It doesn't have to be shown in the words you use. Confidence can be in the tone of language that you use and stuff like that. For me, at least, my radar picks up, and I tend to be much more skeptical of people who are extremely confident than I am of people who, yeah, for reasons similar to what Mukul said, because in the areas where I feel like I'm a little bit of an expert or I know a lot, you start also knowing how little you know. You have some sense of calibrating um, uh, your competence with your awareness of how difficult things are or how little you know about certain things. And so when you see people who are just confident across the board, and for me at least, I end up being a little bit wary. I think that's a good habit to have. And by the way, this point about confidence and in fact, whatever I've said so far about the use of language, again, as I've said before, applies as much to all of you as writers or speakers as it does to you as listeners and readers. So we're giving a set of tools kind of from the consumption side of things to make you better consumers. But I hope that it will also make you better producers, so that you don't use writing as a way of preventing critical thinking or preventing other people from thinking critically, but you use it as a way of making it easier for them to figure out what's at stake, what's right or wrong about a situation. So there are more examples that Carol has, which I won't go through, but I expect you to take a look. And what I'd like to move on to is thinking about another issue, which is quite an important issue, the issue of definitions. There are many reasons for thinking about definitions. But before we get to that, before we get to the issue of definitions, let me ask any questions so far on not necessarily just what we've done in class right now, but the earlier examples of misuse of language in terms of well, framing, emotive versus cognitive, anything we've done so far. Why don't you take a minute? In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch off my video and audio and take maybe 2 minutes and just write down in the chat box anything that, any concept or idea that you have felt so far in the course that has been a little bit unclear, whether it's from the lectures or from the reading. Yeah, it's 5:53. So I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to restart at 5:55.